Imagine how your life would unfold if you had a near-death experience at age 3. This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest, Jacob Cooper, has written a book about his experiences. I've also got clairvoyant Anthony Teresi on the show right here on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio every Wednesday here in Southern California at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, and on Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, it's our interview portion of our show. I've got a special guest. Jacob Cooper is here, and he's got a really interesting life incident that happened to him and a journey that's happened since then. Let me tell you a little bit about Jacob. He's a clinical social worker, certified Reiki Master, like I am, certified hypnotherapist, like I am, and he specializes in past life regression therapy, works privately with clients through online services. He's been inspired by his near-death experience and transformative encounters. He facilitates spiritual awareness and empowerment through life-changing seminars. Currently, he resides and practices in Long Island, New York, and he's the author of the book we're going to talk about today called Life After Breath. It's published by Waterside Productions. So welcome to Guys Radio, Jacob Cooper.
Wow, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be on your program.
Well, we'll have some fun. And I'm glad you're here, and you have such an interesting story. So let's get right to it, Jacob. You were 3 years old. Your family had recently moved. You had recently had some discomforting feelings. You had trouble breathing, possibly whooping cough, and you went to the playground. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I had at the time whooping cough, although my parents didn't know, which for infants, children could be fatal if left, untreated. And so for myself, I went to the playground with family, friends, and due to this highly contagious upper respiratory virus, I suffocated at the playground on that day. I lost my breath. I wasn't able to breathe. And I was just in this place where, it was just kind of like this endless feeling of turmoil where I wasn't, gone, but I wasn't feeling alive. I was just in this incubational period of suffering through my suffocation, and then moments later, I really was able to ascend to a new breath, the breath of eternity, the breath that, I do believe we're all created from. And from my breath from my human body taken away from me, I was able to connect to the breath of eternity. And I did cross over, in the playground, and within that moment, I was able to have awareness of spirit guides, angels, soul family members, past lives, karmic ties, as well as consciousness, to, I guess I will describe the word as higher consciousness or God and Christ consciousness. And so this was all very profound for someone mid-age of life. Bear in mind, someone who was, 3 years old, to have this, all these layers of wisdom that are within all of us that were just kind of being brought up to the surface again in my own backyard that I was, being able to see.
Okay, so then you came out of it. How long were you in this kind of in between this NDE space?
The NDE and what happened to me in suffocation both felt like timeless eternity in a sense. I know I was aware of my body that was irresponsive on the floor, and I tried to communicate to the people around the park who were trying to get my attention, and I was irresponsive, and I was rushed to an ambulance, to a Long Island hospital. But it was some time. I do ask my parents, how long was I out, or the people there, and I guess when something as traumatizing as that happens, you don't really look at your wristwatch, and so people weren't kind of aware, but I wasn't responsive to calls, and I was just suffocated, I was on the ground irresponsive. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the name of the book, Life After Breath, How a Brush with Fatality Gave Me a Glimpse of Immortality. So you were in this in-between space, if you will, and I've had other folks who've had NDEs on the show, and they all seem to have different experiences, yet some similarities. The similarity that I've heard, Jacob, is that everything that you see is kind of happening at the same time. So time is not like on a horizontal plane anymore. It's all happening at once. So your past lives, your future lives, this life, It's all happening. There's a connectivity to all your different uh, incarnations, and also connection to everybody else. And you can kind of see and feel everything. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think we're multi-dimensional beings with multiple layers of awareness. And so for us in the human mind, that's very hard to understand. We're used to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, hours, and there's a linearity to our existence. There's diametric oppositional reality when you're outside of your body, in a sense that it's hard to understand this concept by just hearing it, but there is no time whatsoever. It's the only time is eternity that you experience with no limitation to it.
Now, when you were in this state, did you have the opportunity to decide if you want to stay there? Because it seems, from what I've read and what I've heard from others, it's like overwhelming sense of joy. So, did you have the opportunity to decide I'm going to stay here, or were you asked or kind of coerced to go back?
Well, I obviously decided not to stay there. I wouldn't be here today, but I
Right.
know what you're saying. It would be kind of interesting. Or yes, that is usually, you make a great point. That is the two roads usually that I hear from NDEers is you're given autonomy or you're told that it's not your time. For me, I had autonomy. I was given an option. If I did want to cross over and stay, or stay and continue my journey as 3-year-old Jacob, and I decided to stay, for a plethora of reasons. As beautiful as the other realm of eternity was, and the other side was, bringing that into this reality and being the healer and reminding people who they truly are and what they're infinitely connected to was a far greater tapestry of beauty than going over there in a way. And so bringing the hereafter to the here now, to me at least at the time, was something more alluring because heaven was always going to be there. This unique window was not, and I wanted to take advantage of that.
Now, at some point in the book, you mentioned that in a past life you had taken your life, and then you had come back into this life. Was that information communicated to you while you were in your NDE?
Yes, it was communicated to me my near-death experience, but also subsequent awareness, throughout my lifetimes. And I even had evidential information about that carnation with someone, who read for me prior to me getting public with all this stuff. Known what I wasn't a public figure. I didn't have a book out like I do now. And so she was able to pick up on all the details that I would say, kind of haunted by as a child, and these images and memories and that lifetime. And I do believe messages are completed once lessons are embraced. And I think from other carnations, from completion we begin, and we start off carrying a lot of the goods, the gifts and the good qualities about ourselves, but we also carry over, a lot of the opportunities, and lessons, and some of the similar moves on the chessboard that hopefully we can navigate a little bit more skillfully through a little bit more wisdom and evolution through carnations. But yes,
Um,
yeah.
okay. How much free will do you think people have? Do we come into this from your, based on your experience, and maybe you don't have the answer for this or an inkling to it, but do you feel that you come into this incarnation and then you have a purpose and certain lessons to learn, and that you have a certain path, or can you change your timeline and change your frequency and things like that? Is it all locked in when we're just walking through it, or how much free will do we really have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are both elements interplaying. I mean, certainly, what would be the point if it was all predetermined and destined for us? I think the biggest
Exactly.
component of free will is our power of thoughts. And I know that was really emphasized in my NDE, when I had I guess the premonition and the visions of what I would be doing in this lifetime as a healer and as a teacher. And, some of the doubts that I would ever reach that, area. And I think the greatest component that we have is our power of thoughts to entrust, in faith over fear and to trust our own path. And ultimately, it would be the goal was to overcome, what our path was. I think
Mhm.
astrologically, we're not here to be defined by our sign, but rather to overcome our sign and to learn from it and to evolve through it. So I think with
Got it.
lifetimes, I think we're here to, yes, a lot of it is predetermined, but we're here to ascend through it too as well to greater echelons too.
Okay.
know.
Yeah, there was it's a lot to process. You were 3 years old. You were a toddler, and most people, they don't even remember things from when they were 3 years old. So that was traumatic, and I put it in quotes, but a traumatic situation for you. And then you came out of it, and then you had some challenges throughout your formative years. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like, because I know it must have been tough for you because you had some knowledge that other people didn't have, even that adults had. And then you were a little kid, you're like 4 or 5 years old, and you had some type of wisdom. And it must have made things very tough for you.
Yeah. I think we all on some level remember. It's just maybe not conscious of where home and what we're connected to. I mean, certainly having my near-death experience, I wasn't immune to the amnesia that people have from coming to the shores of this reality. And so there was a deja vu familiarity with everything that I was seeing and experiencing, and almost an embarrassment, a forgetfulness for that. And so I think with all of us, we have that degree of awareness at some deeper part of us, but for that to be conscious is a different uh, juxtaposition. And then you add that to 3 years old, it was different. I would say my near-death experience taught me that the body is not our consciousness. And I think we're able to understand that, but it's a little bit harder when someone's 3 years old, to
Mm,
understand that that infant body is not that surface of what you see. That person is not who they truly are. That is just the surface of their waters. And I think for us, we're infinite beings in this finite body, and we're not defined by our bodies and our chronological age. And so, but it was challenging in a sense that I was kind of a little bit like Benjamin Buttons, where I had this kind of almost, and I think within this human existence, I view us as maturation to the material and, getting acclimated to this world, but also losing our own clarity and wisdom. And so there's an evolutionary process of the material, but also for many, a reduction of their own clarity and truth that comes throughout lifetimes. The goal is to retain those, you know, um, to lose those veils of forgetfulness and stuff like that, as philosophers will talk about, and to drink a little bit less from the waters of forgetfulness, and to remember who we truly are and what we're connected to.
very well stated. The name of the book, Life After Breath: How a Brush with Fatality Gave Me a Glimpse of Immortality. My special guest on Guys Radio, Jacob Cooper. Another little challenge that you had along the way is when you were in your NDE, you kind of met up with Jesus, and you were an Orthodox Jew. So yeah, that must have been a little bit of a surprise. And there is the Christ consciousness that's not necessarily Jesus per se, but you, from what I've read, actually were met up with Jesus while you were in your NDE. Is that correct?
I would say it was more than just seeing him in front of me. Like, I wasn't like him in front of me. It was on a deeper level. It was a vibration. It was an octave. I think ultimately all of our souls were just octaves, were just vibration, were just sounds. And so for me, it was just more than just seeing a physical embodiment of it. It was just an eternal energy of that vibration. And so I really kept the experience close to heart for so many different reasons, but certainly, I'm sure that that was a part of it. I mean, growing up in a very traditional home, bear in mind, I mean, Jesus was probably more Jewish than I am. I mean, he was born a Jew in Israel, and
That's
it was
true.
very, very authentic. People forget that he was more of a kind of a liberal, um, kind of reform rabbi, if you will, right? In some of his social
True.
policies, he was very left wing and stuff like that. So different than what's depicted as. He wasn't born in Chick-fil-A like a lot of people think. He was born a Middle Eastern guy in Israel. That's what people forget. But so but it was a familiarity. It was a comfort. I think if I could describe the sensation of being on the other side and being with Christ, it's we're not used to this. Where we're used to, okay, in order for me to get to a certain feeling, I have to do something. I have to get to that point. I have to, and we're always looking ahead. And so to be in this place of eternal oasis of peace, and the best way I could describe it as all is well and all was always well on an incredibly deep level was kind of what I experienced. We're not used to that. We're used to glimpses of eternity and glimpses of peace, but not accessing the nature of peace itself, and trusting that we can never be damaged, harmed. We are divine spiritual beings having these, wonderful human experiences, but that we never lose touch of our own home and our own beauty and what we're forever connected to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that along the way, then as you developed, you still had flashes now and then where you would see Native Americans or wolves, and you get feelings about things when you saw the Twin Towers, or even when you saw some people were talking about The Apprentice and Donald Trump. You got certain sensations. It's pretty amazing. How has that played out throughout your life, and has that opened up more, or do you get things on a regular basis, some kinds of knowing or premonitions, or how does it work? And what gifts do you think you've been able to accumulate based on your experience?
My experience was that of suffocation, and it really, messed with a lot of my bioneurochemistry. And I know my brain was never the same from that. And, my brain literally suffocated and, shut down. And I learned from that the brain is just merely a filter between the two worlds. And I think of us as eternal light, and we have a projector of this light. And so the light itself is who we are. But if we have all these images that get in the way of light, that's what we see as reality. It's kind of a little bit like the allegory of the cave with Plato, with, the prism, of light behind the prisoners, and that's what they see. And once they kind of break through that, they're able to have a higher state of awareness. And I think really the brain is a great ally and saying that should work with us, to really connect to higher consciousness. But I would say it's almost kind of like we all have intuitive hints, but we don't always listen. And sometimes we bog that down in doubts. But I think there's always this kind of like this voiceless voice occurring beyond this reality. It's just kind of like this radio dial frequency where you have this in front of you, and then on another wavelength, there's some other interplaying radio station that's going on. And I think we all tune into that, but sometimes we just bog it down, doubt it, and then when it happens, to anyone.
Hmm. Um, your friend Robert, you started to see things, and just following up on the last point, you began to see things throughout your life. What could happen with people, certain situations. I mentioned the Twin Towers. You got a feeling about Trump. Your friend Robert, you saw him, and you realized that he wasn't going to be around for too much longer. Has that gift, if you will, and I'll put it in quotes, stayed with you?
Yes, I mean it's not something that I practice professionally full time, as an intuitive or, mediumistic, but I do use it within, my practice. For instance, when I do give healings or as a Reiki practitioner, that stuff does come up. Or within psychotherapy, I do intuitive, kind of counseling or intuitive psychotherapy, where it doesn't mean that you go bluntly like the Long Island medium saying like, "Oh, your mother is here," whatever, but you kind of ask these intuitive questions. So we call it clinical intuition. That's kind of the term. And I know Dr. Judith Orloff speaks a lot about that, you know. So that's something that I utilize, but it happens to me, throughout the day. But yes, that was a beautiful moment with Robert. And what's interesting is most of my newer friends are mediums who have passed on, and this was the kind of work that they're doing. And so they're very good at knowing how to get messages to us because that was the work in the line that they did full time. So Robert's always around, and there's a lot of moments of validation that I've had through his presence. But a
Mhm.
wonderful guide of mine to this day.
Now, what is your connection with? You mentioned in the book, Shirley Maclaine pops up in some of the credits. What's your connection there?
But we do have an April 24th connection. We're born the same day. Um,
And have you
I
met
have
her?
o-
Have you met her or spoken with her?
I think in some way we all know each other. So I haven't met her physically, but hopefully within this lifetime I will. But she's definitely a teacher of mine, someone that I've really learned a lot from. Someone who I think deserves a lot more just mentions and credit for the daring, groundbreaking, and pioneering work that she did and continues. But I was very touched with a lot of her work, and it spoke to me on a very deep level from Out on a Limb, to the Camino de Santiago book, and uh, just she had a lot of different other books that I've read that were great too. And but I just loved her work, and I loved how daring she was, and just how many layers she had to her, and how she was able to integrate so many different carnations into this one lifetime. As you know, for anyone to do 1/10 of what she does and develop that in one lifetime is almost impossible. So it's very clearly that she's a very evolved and older being, and she brings a lot of those gifts and different acts to this lifetime, literally and metaphorically.
Okay. Last question. Again, my special guest, Jacob Cooper. Life After Breath is the book. How a Brush with Fatality gave me a glimpse of immortality. Um, what has it throughout the book? You've been told by people who also have some gifts that you'd be in front of a lot of people, you'd be teaching, that you have a beautiful path in front of you. Yet you, through up until the point that the book was launched, you've had some challenges along the way in terms of interpersonal relationships, family, school, jobs, all of that stuff. What has happened now since the book has come out, and where do you see yourself going from this point on, Jacob?
Yeah, I firmly believe that no one is immune from the human experience, and we all certainly have stuff happen to us. And I think some of the strongest souls are tested with the strongest challenges, and you're not meant with anything that isn't made to make you stronger, not break you. I think things are made to make you, not break you. And so, for myself, I've been doing this work for a number of years in public speaking and talks, and I think the next steps are just going to continue as the world opens up. To get more public, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to be presenting at the Forever Family Foundation summer retreat and giving a 2-day workshop there. And that's a wonderful organization for grief, participant people going through grief and loss, and I guess they're looking for belief as a tool for their own grief and what they're working with. And so it's a great supportive organization. But my goal is to continue to do what I was doing pre-pandemic and to see people in person and to do a lot more workshops and talk. I think that's my biggest passion in life, is that human interaction and human connectivity, and inspiring people in any way that I can.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, good job,
Thank you.
Jacob Cooper. Tell everybody where they can find out more about you and get the book, Life After Breath, Jacob.
Yeah, for those interested in learning more, if you have any questions about our interview today, you could look at my website at jacoblcooper.com. That's jacoblcooper.com. And there you could find toolbars of the social media links for Facebook, Instagram. I do provide daily inspirational messages on social media, for people that, people seem to like, as well as upcoming events, listed on my website, social media pages, which I probably have to update shortly because I know we're starting to get acclimated to be doing in-person stuff. So, things are speeding up. We have to kind of get used to the way that things were before, right? So thank you.
All right. Well, good job. Nice work, and keep it going, Jacob. Thanks for being on Guys Radio.
A true honor. Thank you so much for having me on. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the interview and want to support all the helpful content we bring you each week here on Guys TV, then please subscribe now and also on my podcast, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support.